Back again. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the middle of this book. As you know, if you've been following these, I have a structure in my mind which I use for novels. I found it very successful, and you may do too. If you want coaching, I am available. I have slots. It's $40 for each 40-minute Zoom session. Prior to the session, I send you resources. We work on exercises together in the session, and I will also read up to 5 pages of what you've been writing when you've been working on your own novel, ready for our session, and then I will give you feedback and I will send you further resources as well. So it's a very reasonable price, actually. I keep my eye on other writing schools and groups that will make a charge for helping you to organise your book, or perhaps if you have no clue where to start, but you've just always dreamed of writing a novel. But I have to say my rates are very reasonable, and I'm experienced and I have good results. So bear that in mind. Do contact me if you're interested. But the structure that I will often recommend to you is to have a clear beginning, middle, and end of the book. It's satisfying for the reader that way. It's logical. It gives you a clear structure as well. I recommend writing chapters of around 1,500 to 2,000 words each. And about 10 or 12 chapters per each of your 3 sections. I've just talked you through the beginning of this book, my novel, which is called Luck. And now I'd like to tell you about the middle of the novel. Now, the middle of the novel can be where some writers lose momentum. So it's really important to keep motivated, and I can help you there. Because you've set up a lot of initial excitement and intrigue and subplots and characters within your beginning. Now you need to do the hard work of moving that forward. So this is quite a meaty section. Your reader is engaged. They're committed to your book. You don't want to let them down. But you're not yet into the end section where you resolve things. So this is the time where there will be conflict and drama. There will be incidents. There'll be things going wrong for your main protagonists, and this is the meat of your story. You need to have a good story, and I will talk on another one of these sessions about how to come up with plots. So I had just told you a little bit about up to chapter 10, and we ended on a cliffhanger, which is that Peter, who has very little experience in the criminal underworld, he's been thrust into it because of this opportunity that he has spotted to blackmail people. He has just been ordered by the Spider's men to kill Lucky, who is the star of the local TV station, because Lucky has, unfortunately for him, noticed that Peter was late into work at the TV station. And Peter didn't want anybody to notice because, of course, we know where he went overnight. And Lucky is being held in this basement of this restaurant that is under the Spider's control. So there's nobody there that Lucky can trust. And he thinks that he will be killed. He's going to be executed for his silence. So he's very, very nervous. And he's also been drugged, so his thoughts are somewhat confused. So Lucky's got to rack his brains and try and get out of this. So we open chapter 11 from Nina's point of view. Now, Nina is the youngest of the trafficked Venezuelan women who was being held at the farm in Texas, and she has stowed away in Peter's truck, unbeknownst to him, and she has managed to get into the TV station. So we go back in time in chapter 11. We see what it was like for her to make that very dangerous journey, and we hear a little bit from her about her past, about how she was brought from Venezuela, the reasons why she chose and her family chose to give money to somebody who promised to bring her to a better life in America, and now has actually reneged on all his promises and has said to her that her and her family haven't given enough money, and therefore she will have to work for nothing for this farm. She was to be provided with perhaps some accommodation and some food, but no payment until her debt had been paid off. And that's a disaster for Nina. Her whole rationale for coming into the USA was she wanted to make money right away to send back to her large family in Venezuela. So Nina has escaped, and we hear a bit about how dangerous it was coming across the border into the USA. And we hear a bit about how she's managed to escape from the farm in Texas, and she's arrived now in New Orleans. And it's Nina's dream. She's always longed to live in the US. We hear a bit about how important TV was for her growing up. She has fallen in love with American TV stars, and she dreams that somehow one day she will be one of them herself. So she's managed to confuse the staff sufficiently to get inside the Channel 6 building, possibly the fact that she is so very young and quite pretty and a bit cheeky. She's managed to, use their kind natures, and she's in. But she has nothing. She has the clothes she stands up in. She has nowhere to live. She has access to no money at all. She doesn't have food. She doesn't know where she's going to spend the night. But because she's 17 and she's living her dream of being in America, her hopes are pretty high. And she's met Anne, the wife of Lucky, in the elevator. So then chapter 12, we see that Nina sneaks into a meeting with the TV station employees. And what's being discussed that day is this data breach, which is extremely bad news for everybody who works there, because Ham Roscoe, the local politician, his trust has been lost. He is a big client of theirs, and he is now proposing that he will no longer use Channel 6 for his messaging about his campaigns. And if that happens, if he ends that contract prematurely, many of the people, the TV station employees, stand to lose their jobs. And Anne is very upset about this, and also her marriage problems, the fact that she feels that Lucky has been unfaithful and she may have to separate and divorce. And Anne has met Nina and is taking care of her. She's taken her under her wing. She's a young girl. Everybody assumes that Nina is just a new intern. So Anne notices that Nina's in rather inappropriate clothing and doesn't seem to be particularly clean, or she seems unkempt. And Anne just takes pity on her and sends Nina off to the wardrobe department, where there are lots of outfits that are worn by the on-air talent. And Nina is able to borrow some clothes from a lady there who works there called Sandra. So chapter 13, we return to Lucky's point of view. He thinks that he's about to be killed by Peter. He's terrified, of course. He is allowed to make one phone call, and he chooses to call his wife. He's not allowed, of course, to say anything that he's going through. There's a gun to his head. He's not able to do that. But he wants to try to make his peace with Anne. But to keep her safe, when she, on the phone call, accuses him once again of being unfaithful, he lies and says, yes, she's correct. He's having an affair, and that's where he is. Because for her own safety, he can't reveal where he actually is. He doesn't want her mixed up in these organised criminals that he has been working for. So it's the end of their marriage. Lucky ends the call. To try to stall for time and think of some way that he can get out of this situation, Lucky insists to Peter to let him have one final cigarette before he's executed. Then chapter 14, we meet the Spider, who we know is controlling these criminal activities, but we haven't met him yet. I kept him in reserve because I feel it's the unknown. I want him to be pretty scary, and I don't want the reader to get too comfortable by seeing him too much. I want him in the shadows, almost as if we have to show him respect in the same way that his men that work for him do. So he is having a drink alone in one of his restaurants, which is under his control. And it's staffed by workers who have been trafficked into the USA as part of his criminal empire. And there's an explanation. The Spider is considering his next move, and we're able to be privy to his thoughts and his narrative. So there's an explanation of how he is controlling Lucky and Ham Roscoe and Peter. And we learn a little of Lucky's backstory about how he first moved to New Orleans and had to borrow money from a loan shark, which he couldn't pay back. And he has then, ever since then, owed the Spider a favor. The Spider has also become aware of pretty young Nina, the 17-year-old. He believes that she's still being held at the farm in Texas by Jose. And the Spider has some unpleasant thoughts about her. We think that perhaps he will try to use her for sex because she has no choice. He doesn't know that she's escaped. My books don't tend to have horrible things happen, I must say. They're more cozy mysteries than gritty true crime. Chapter 15, so we return to Anne, Lucky's wife, and she's lost all love for Lucky, really. This is one infidelity too many. She believes he's committed. So she goes around to Rebecca's house. The two women drink wine. Rebecca says that she's a lesbian, and they end up having sex upstairs in the bathtub. But then they hear someone breaking into Rebecca's house downstairs. So that's a cliffhanger at the end of that chapter. So chapter 16, they call the police, Anne and Rebecca, about this break-in. The cop decides to look into Lucky's disappearance, which comes up. Anne had previously chosen not to report him as a missing person because she believed wrongly that he was with some lover. But when the cop points out that it is surprising that Lucky is nowhere to be found and there's a mysterious break-in where nothing seems to have been taken, all at once, the cop decides he's going to see whether there is some connection and make some inquiries to find out where Lucky has disappeared to. And Rebecca temporarily moves into Anne's side of the house so the two women can keep one another safe, given that there are break-ins in the neighbourhood, and to give her some comfort and companionship. Chapter 17, so Lucky and the spider have a tense talk within this restaurant. The spider had ordered Lucky's execution, but he wants to have a chat with this person first. Lucky learns that the spider wants Ham Roscoe to remain in office because this would allow the spider to retain the monopoly on bringing Venezuelan people into New Orleans. So he doesn't want there to be a legal avenue for that. He wants to be the only choice that people have so he can charge what he likes. So Lucky is let go. He's confused by this. He doesn't know that he's being now bugged through his mobile phone. So Lucky's men give back to him his phone, but it now has a tracking device so they can monitor his movements and they can also see everything that he views on his phone. So he will now have no privacy, but he's unaware of this. So chapter 18, we return to the TV channel, the station where Nina is sleeping in the wardrobe department. They have some beds for the talent if they have a late night. There's showering facilities as well, and she's able to borrow clothes. So she's able to be reasonably successful in her unpaid job, and no one suspects, apart from Sandra, who runs the wardrobe department. But she turns a blind eye. She wonders whether Nina may be homeless, unhoused at the time, and she doesn't want to make things more difficult for her. And Nina, although she doesn't have a reliable source of income or food, is able to find sufficient catering around that building, whether it's sandwiches provided for meetings, muffins sometimes are brought in for breakfasts for the on-air talent. There's a snack table. So Nina's doing okay. It may be precarious, but it's not a bad life, and she thinks she can sustain it. Unfortunately, she doesn't know that the spider has these designs upon her and will quickly learn that she has escaped and will start to look for her. This will be, I think I'll probably write a further chapter to end the middle section, because what I would like to do is just have a further cliffhanger, perhaps around Peter's fate. I am thinking about the way that he will be able to blackmail these key players. And I'm thinking about how he's going to use this information to his best advantage. I also want to firm up in my own mind who at the TV station is going to be affected by the possible layoffs and what will be the impact there. I also need to decide exactly who it was who followed Peter when he first went to the farm in Texas. I would quite like to make it Anne, but I need to think carefully about why then she hasn't raised it with him. If she noticed that he was going somewhere unusual, or that he brought in a different car to work in the middle of the week, perhaps a vehicle if they're friends that she's aware he would tend to use for weekend trips, camping, etc. So that may also bring her into danger if she is asking too many questions. So that concludes the middle of the book. What do you think should happen in the end? I wonder if you agree with me. Do let me know. I would love to hear your feedback and your comments and any questions about how to write your own novel.